Welcome, everyone. We will begin this convention shortly. While you are waiting, please follow the instructions on the screen.
Good morning, everyone who's just joining. We're still waiting for a few more people to trickle in. So if you can continue answering what city you're from, we'll begin shortly. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Mitrakos, and I'm happy to be emceeing the first ever virtual NHSA convention, along with my co-host, Yanni Metaxa. We are excited to have you all here today from various time zones and locations around the world as we embrace change and innovation in these challenging times.
Thank you, Anthi. It's a pleasure to be here. Though spatial distance has altered what it means to gather as a student association and celebrate our friendship, heritage, and education together, I sit here enamored with the persistence of our shared identity. We are forced to reckon with the fact that we are scattered across North America's finest cities and suburbs. In doing so, I have realized that we are not too unlike Konstantine P. Cavafy. Konstantine was born in Alexandria, spent half his childhood in Liverpool, and resided in Constantinople before returning home to Alexandria. Cavafy was not a Hellene, but that doesn't matter. He identified as Ellinikos, or Hellenic, much like we do as a Hellenic student association. No matter where any of us were born or grew up or currently live, there's one thing that bonds us more than a flag or DNA genetic tests ever can. Today, I am as proud as ever to join my fellow Hellenic peers in keeping our rich tradition alive and learning from some of the best and brightest Hellenic culture has to offer. You're all in for a treat. To kick off our event, we will be hearing from NHSA President Petros Besieris, Vice President Renee Vorilas, and past NHSA President and Chairman Konstantine Ouranatsis.
All right. Thank you, Antti and Yanni, for the warm introduction. Attendees, speakers, and supporters, kalimera and kalispera σε όσους συμμετέχουν επευθείας από την Ελλάδα. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the National Hellenic Student Association of North America's first ever virtual convention. Given these unprecedented and difficult times, and despite not being in person, we are truly grateful for the enormous support received by everyone's attendance today, whether you are here in the US, Canada, or even overseas. I'd like to acknowledge all of us who have been part of the solution in social distancing, wearing masks, and helping family members, friends, and neighbors who needed us most. And a big thank you to all the frontline workers, from doctors and nurses to even grocery shop cashiers and many more. We entered into an environment that suddenly opened up so many opportunities we never would have imagined. The capability of virtual telecommunication expanded our connections and reached past the barriers of geography, cost, and time. Organizations such as THI, HELP, NHS, and PHSF were able to host virtual talks, interviews, and events that strive to educate, inspire, and comfort us this year. Even in today's new normal, we rose to the occasion to overcome the challenges and create positive experiences for ourselves and those around us. We found more time to slow our hectic lives, self-reflect, and rejuvenate. We reconnected with long-lost friends and discovered or rediscovered our passions. We have people in our audience today who began playing an instrument, drawing, or reading. Some even created a podcast, while others sewed masks for our frontline workers who fought against this virus. Everyone had to get creative, and eventually many found a sense of comfort. Our board at NHSA also had to get creative in maintaining our connections with our members. Most notably, our last major event before the convention was a virtual meet and greet with more than 35 leaders from over 20 associations across the US and Canada. We collectively discussed the challenges students, young professionals, and the respective associations faced. We collaborated and exchanged advice on event planning, fundraising, and recruitment goals. And through these meaningful conversations, we helped foster the idea on creating a Hellenic Society FAQ to help guide chapters with their future operations, events, and outreach. In addition to connecting with our HSA chapters, we also formed our Path to Success mini-series, which included notable CEOs, ambassadors, executive directors, journalists, entrepreneurs, and artists within the Greek community. Our goal continues to build a stronger and more united Hellenic community for students and young professionals through our various educational, professional, and social programs and initiatives. We are the millennial and Gen Z generation. We are in 2020. And we are tackling social, political, environmental, and financial issues that have rapidly evolved and are more interconnected than ever before. These challenges inspired our convention theme, embracing change and innovation. We will be hearing panelists discuss the evolving demands of society, business, environment, and technology. While our conference today will better equip you to understand with what change and innovation enables us to become, we do hope that you return to your community, university, and our profession with a renewed sense of professionalism, community, morphosi, pedia, and civic responsibility. So before I continue with our program, I'd like for you to know these moments that truly matter, help us bring together, and will help us reflect on how much change we've brought to our society despite a global crisis. While I don't know what tomorrow, let alone next week, will bring for us, I do know that we've already taken the first step by being here today. So thank you again and welcome. And I will pass it off to Renee.
Thank you so much, Petra. Couldn't have said it better. The National Hellenic Student Association is so much more than a group of young professionals around the world. NHSA supports Hellenic societies across the USA and Canada with so many things, ranging from scholarships to helping fund and plan events. In 2019, NHSA held a beach cleanup in association with the Hellenic Initiative and Ethalon, where 50 volunteers from Greece and the USA helped clean up a beach in Athens. This event brought people from across the globe together for a single purpose. In addition, NHSA, along with the Ariston Foundation, provides merit-based scholarships to students with Hellenic descent from the USA and Canada. Today, we will present those scholarships to the wonderful and deserving students who applied among a large pool of applicants. Although COVID-19 hit and forced us to move this convention online, we kept pushing toward our goal of bringing students together and have found much success in doing so. Our virtual event series has just begun, and HSAs across North America have joined us for fun, yet productive and helpful events where we get to see the faces of the people who are constantly spreading our mission through their own communities. We thank you all for being here and hope you enjoy the remainder of the convention. Now I'm going to be turning this over to Kostas.
All right, thanks so much, Renee. It's with great pleasure that on behalf of myself, the Advisory Council, and the Board of Trustees, that I welcome you to the National Hellenic Student Association's first ever virtual convention. I'm excited to provide you with a few programming updates. First, NHSA will begin its election process for our 2021 Executive Board in the coming weeks. Being part of the Executive Board has provided its members with great opportunities to engage with leaders in the Hellenic community, job and internship opportunities, and practical skills that are useful in all aspects of your life. NHSA has recently begun 2 new collaborations. We continue to partner with Ethalon and the Hellenic Initiative, as Renee said, for the beach cleanup. However, this year, we've also partnered with a program called Greek Week, which will provide a week-long sailing trip near Athens. Similar to Yacht Week in Croatia, this program is sure to be engaging, interactive, and fun. The program will begin Friday, July 7th, 2021, and the beach cleanup and then boats will depart the following day. The second collaboration is with the Sons of Pericles, called Greece 200, or Bicentennial Greece, which is aimed at uniting the Hellenic young professional community and celebrating the 200-year anniversary of Greece's independence here in North America. Greece 200, which started in September, has and will continue to provide interactive educational and cultural programs through a virtual platform until next summer. During 2021, the committee's goal is to break ground on a monument in Athens commemorating the Greek genocide. We encourage all organizations that are geared towards young professionals or have young professional divisions to join us in honoring our past by building our future. More information on the beach cleanup, Greek Week, Greece 200, and elections will be available on our website and social media. Once again, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Konstantine. And now we will be hearing from His Eminence, Archbishop Elpidophoros of America, who was enthroned in June of last year, and since then has continued to elevate Archdiocese. In his enthronement speech, Archbishop Elpidophoros discussed his initiative to engage the Greek Orthodox youth. We are honored to have his support as a leader, and though he could not be with us here live today, he would like to share a video message with us all.
My beloved friends in the Lord, I am delighted to join you for your first virtual convention of the National Hellenic Student Association. Your organization, which binds young and brilliant Greek American scholars around the country, is a most precious star in the constellation of homogeneous bodies in the diaspora. Your support for Greece is well known. Your annual project to promote ecological wellness in Greece is truly admirable. Your commitment to Hellas is a promise for the future because you are the future leaders of our community and of our nation. Your theme of embracing change and innovation is particularly poignant because the pandemic has forced world change and innovation upon the entire ecumeny. But you are facing this head-on, and by embracing them, you will be more effective and more impactful. We have all had to learn how to function in this new environment, and although every day I pray for a cure and for a vaccine, about which we have had some exciting news this week, when we turn the corner on this pandemic, we should make sure not to forget the good lessons that we have learned. Knowledge either evolves or devolves. We either are growing in our understanding and enlightenment, or we are shrinking in our minds and hearts. I want to commend all of you for preserving through the pandemic and keeping your commitment to the National Hellenic Student Association. May our Lord Jesus Christ continue to bless you, illumine you, and bring your hearts and minds His peace as you further your good work and your noble purpose. Amen.
We would like to thank His Eminence for kindly sending us his message and words of encouragement. We will now be hearing from Ambassador of Cyprus to the U.S., Marios Lysiotis. Ambassador Lysiotis joined the Foreign Service in 1991, and prior to his current appointment, served as diplomatic advisor to the Minister of Defense and as ambassador of the Republic of Cyprus to France, among other positions held with UNESCO, the UN, and EU. Ambassador Lysiotis.
Mr. President, distinguished guests, dear friends, allow me first of all to congratulate you for organizing this convention and for your kind invitation to say a few words. I was thinking this morning, before joining you, of last year's fall convention, measuring how our lives and the world around us have changed in such a short time. It is debatable whether this pandemic signals a turning point in world history. We will learn after the event. It has certainly accelerated the pre-existing trends. We are all engaged in remote learning, remote conventions, remote diplomacy even. At the personal level, we are confronted to formidable challenges. How to study, how to work, create, live a life worth living in difficult and uncertain conditions. Let's seize the challenge, however. Let's see this moment as the great laboratory where new ideas, new ways of being, of thinking, of solving problems are created. That's why I consider your convention today so timely. As Hellenes, we are well equipped to do that. Our long and great history, our prosperous and thriving communities around the world are a testimony to our resilience in times of adversity. Echoing the words of Cavafy and of Mr. Metaxas earlier, who referred to this great poet of the diaspora, we Hellenes, with our flexible policy of judicious integration, not only we preserved through the centuries our language, our faith, our values, but we created in all the fields of human activity, and when it was necessary, we stood strong, making the world a better place. Dear friends, as we face these challenges, trying to navigate in uncharted waters, the world around us has become a more dangerous place. In particular, in our part of the world, this the Mediterranean. Pandemic or no pandemic, Turkey not only continued its provocative, aggressive behavior, but it raised it to new dangerous levels of escalation in Cyprus, in Greece, in the region, and beyond. As we speak, Turkey is continuing its provocations in the exclusive economic zone of Cyprus, in the Aegean. It proceeds to the opening of the fenced area of Varosha, in utter disrespect of Security Council resolutions, which explicitly call for the return of these now lawful inhabitants. Actually, Erdogan is planning a picnic in the next few days in Varosha. We are currently engaged in an important diplomatic effort to counter these designs. And in this effort, your support and mobilization in this great country is crucial. Let's be united. Let us also find new ways of making our action more effective. We have the resources. We have you, well-educated, integrated, successful, and active members of this society. Thank you for inviting me, and my best wishes for a very successful convention. Be safe. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your encouraging words. And thank you for joining us today. At this point, I would like to introduce our panel guests who will be discussing the topic of meeting the needs of an evolving society. Joining us live from Athens today are Minister of Tourism, Theoharis, Minister of Development and Investment, Adonis Georgiadis, and Mayor of Athens, Kostas Bakoyannis. The panel is moderated by Georgetown University graduate and founder of Regnum Communications and Strategy, Dimitris Mouchlidis, live from Washington, D.C. A member of the Hellenic Parliament since 2015, Minister of Tourism Theoharis has held high-ranking positions in the private sector in Greece and abroad, and has also worked in the startup industry. Among other achievements, Mr. Theoharis is known for introducing new digital services to assist the Hellenic public and help reduce bureaucracy. He is also known for launching the publicrevenue.gr platform to increase transparency in public administration. Minister of Development and Investments Adonis Georgiadis has previously served as Deputy Minister for Development, Competitiveness and Shipping, and Minister for Health, among other public service roles. He is a publisher and an author of several books, and is a graduate of the Department of History and Archaeology at the National Capodistria University of Athens. Mayor of Athens, Kostas Bakoyannis, has held various public service positions, including that of Mayor of Karpenisi and Regional Governor of Central Greece. He holds a PhD in political science and international relations from the University of Oxford, has worked at the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and has held various positions in the European Parliament in Brussels and the World Bank in Kosovo. Mr. Bakoyannis is also a graduate of Brown and Harvard universities. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Anthi. Welcome on behalf of the Executive Board of the National Hellenic Student Association. My name is Dimitris Mouchlidis, and I will be serving as a moderator for this panel today. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our first virtual convention entitled Embrace Change and Innovation. And this is an essential and timely event for the Hellenic community, especially in this challenging time when Greece's leaders are currently shifting their mindset from how to avert the novel coronavirus to strategies to prepare the country for the future. I'm really honored that we have three distinguished people who are going to be on the panel today with me. The Minister of Tourism, Mr. Theoharis, the Minister of Development and Investments, Mr. Adonis Georgiadis, and the Mayor of Athens, Mr. Kostas Bakoyannis. Welcome, gentlemen. As you can imagine, this panel's agenda is impressively rich, and I'm looking forward to a very fruitful discussion. Before we get started, I'd like to encourage all participants to actively engage in this conversation and ask questions. There will be a 10-minute Q&A at the end, and we will be addressing as many questions as we can. The only thing you can do is just click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and submit your questions. So I'd like to kick off the panel discussion by asking you, gentlemen, a warm-up question. How would you describe your leadership style, and how has that been effective in your career? Mr. Georgiadis, I know that your schedule is very tight today, so would you like to go first?
Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. The National Hellenic Student Association is doing a great job. It's a fantastic idea that you organize this webinar under COVID-19 circumstances. I'm very glad I'm seeing the Mayor of Athens, Mr. Bakoyannis, because just 5 minutes ago, I retweeted one of his announcements about a fantastic new discovery in Eoli Street in Athens. Some hours ago, as they were trying to fix something there, a fantastic ancient piece of an ancient statue. The head of an ancient statue has been found. Very beautiful, I can say, Mr. Mayor. And I'm sure it will find a great place in this beautiful city you are building. So the style. What we're trying to do under these very difficult circumstances, because everybody understands that this may be the biggest crisis of humanity after the Second World War, is to explain to the people exactly why we take any decision that change their lives and influence their lives. Try to give them all the information are needed. We're trying to open our offices and our way of thinking. We're trying to hear what they want, solve their problems as fast as possible, because in day-by-day basis now there are problems that we could never even imagine before. And we try to be as human as we can. It's not time for leaders to be far away and distant from people and trying to show themselves. It's a time to be with everybody in this very difficult period and find a way for everybody to exit all together. And this is what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Mr. Bakoyannis?
Well, good evening from Athens. Let me thank you very much for the kind invitation. It is indeed a pleasure to join two distinguished ministers this afternoon. Talking about the leadership style, well, I've been serving local government for 10 years now, and I think there are certain clear characteristics of local government if at least one wants to not only be successful, but even survive. Number one, it's about working bottom up. It's about being as close to society as possible. It's about talking less and listening more. Number two, it's about building coalitions. It's about building coalitions that at times may transcend party or ideological lines. At the end of the day, in our line of work, pavements have no ideology, streets have no color. Number three, it's about, as Adonis said earlier, getting to real solutions to real problems. It's about getting things done. There's actually a lovely story of Teddy Kollek. Teddy Kollek was the mayor of Jerusalem for a number of years. He's even been described as the builder of the city. Apparently, one morning, the leaders of the different religions in the Holy Lands were gathered in his office, and they were arguing about access to the Holy Lands themselves. And so he was listening to them very carefully, and after a certain point, he ran out of patience, and he just turned to them and said, "Gentlemen, you solve your issues and I'll fix your sewage system." I think that reflects what we're trying to do. And especially at times such as these, this is indeed an unprecedented crisis that in many ways we could not have expected. Especially now, it's very, very important for all of us to remain grounded, not to wave our finger left and right, but to be as persuasive as we can, to make sure that we all together get out of this crisis safe and sound.
Great, thank you. Mr. Theoharis, welcome again. Thank you for joining us today. In case you didn't hear the question, my question was, how would you describe your leadership style and how has that been effective in your career?
Indeed, thank you very much for the kind invitation. Leadership in a time of crisis, of course, is more required than ever, especially in a field like the one that me and Minister Georgiadis is leading, which is not the prime consideration of people or of governments. Of course, the health situation is the number one. And what we've been called for to do is to balance, coordinate, and ensure this good cooperation during this time of crisis in order, for example, to restart something as complicated as the touristic industry of Greece. Many agencies, the public and private sector, the levels of government, the local government that Mayor Bakoyannis is representing here in our discussion, as well as the central government, all had to come together in order to make this complex product work. And we had to do that when we had to plan a few months ahead with a lot of, very few in our hands in terms of predictive ability. What's going to happen in 2 or 3 months' time, even now? If you ask me, I cannot describe the environment in January or in February. So you have to understand that you have to be very humble, very grounded, as Minister Georgiadis said, very close and attentive to the needs of the people. And at the same time, you need to provide solutions to problems that people don't even think they have. Because back in, for example, in April, we were given the task of reopening in July and solving the problems that we would have much later down the line. So this was the most difficult task that we had to implement during this crisis, and I think with great success.
Thank you, all of you, for sharing your viewpoints on leadership. What I found particularly interesting while you were talking is that regardless of the leadership style each one of you has chosen to adopt, they all have one thing in common, and that is what I call strategic thinking. You all made it clear that people preparing for a career in public administration, whether it be in civil departments, agencies, or government, must develop strategic thinking skills as they often deal with, like you said, a variety of dissenting viewpoints and opinions, both within and outside of their respective organization. So being a strategic leader means being responsible for guiding the way through change and innovation, and having the ability to make common sense of a situation, no matter how complex and ambiguous the conditions. And this ties back to what the president of NHSA mentioned earlier, that strategic thinking fosters a creative and open environment where innovation will happen naturally. And speaking of innovation and creativity, I would like to ask Mr. Georgiadis a question regarding drain brain, because as you know, in order to create an attractive and meritocratic environment to stop the brain drain is a very hard target to achieve. So, Mr. Georgiadis, tackling the brain drain and boosting entrepreneurship has been a key priority since the Tsipras administration, with a particular focus on Greek startups. How have you continued and expanded the legislation and initiatives that will foster innovation, creativity, and business?
This 1.5 year that we took the government after the elections of July 2019, and especially when the Prime Minister gave me the responsibility of the leadership of the Greek Minister of Development and Investment, and gave under my authority all the startup, cloud, and all the new technologies under my ministry. We have started in a very fast way to transforming Greece to a way to attract foreign direct investments in this field and diversing brain drain to brain gain. I'm very proud to say that after these 16 months, we have really managed to have some big successes. I will name the most popular and famous of them. We started last September with Pfizer, that Pfizer picked Thessaloniki for one of their 6 out of the US digital centers. They have decided at that time to hire 200 computer engineers. Now they have expanded to 500 computer engineers. And many of them are Greeks that are coming up from abroad, coming back to Greece because Pfizer is a big company. They give them good salaries and give opportunities for their career. After Pfizer, we persuaded Cisco also to come to Thessaloniki and find and establish an educational center. Deloitte, a new big center. Microsoft decided to make a huge investment in data center in Athens. 2 weeks ago, Digital Realty also announced a $500 million investment in data center in Attica and Crete. And we're in a very good talking with other big, huge US companies. I don't want to say the names because I want to announce when it finishes, in order to find ways to have more, especially US investments in this area in Greece. At the same time, we signed with Secretary Pompeo a deal between the two countries that the US government encouraged US established companies of digital sector to come and cooperate and make joint venture with Greek companies and startup companies. We established in Athens, and we have started a big hub for startup company in Piraeus Street, the old Chropi, which is going to be transformed in the next 2 years to one of the most beautiful places of Athens, around 3 universities, fantastic place, big incentives for startup companies to go and do their job there. We're already starting the same thing in a bigger scale in Thessaloniki with Esintech. And we're changing all the legislation, less taxation and less social contribution in the salaries in order to make Greece more attractive for people to decide to come and work in Greece than working abroad. So this is a policy that is start giving fruits in order to have the opportunity of attracting more people come to work in Greece, not only Greeks and foreigners, of course, with these capabilities and skills, but also Greeks that left the last decade and they want to come back and live in Greece, but with also having a good career and a good perspectives. So all the policy of the government is very solid, and I'm sure that when COVID-19 crisis will finish and the pandemic will be over, our economy in this sector will go in a very fast rhythm.
Thank you so much. Indeed, it's what you basically said, that the administration of Kyriakos Mitsotakis was made huge successes in regards to facing the brain drain, but it's indeed a hard target to achieve this goal. But it's really indispensable for our country. And if you continue to doing all these policies that you mentioned and all these collaborations and investments with big companies like Deloitte and Microsoft that you mentioned earlier, I'm pretty sure that you will start repatriating an important number of new scientists and entrepreneurs who left the country during the economic crisis. I know that you need to leave us earlier, so if you would like to leave, I'd like to thank you for being here with us today. And I'm looking forward to having a very productive conversation with you when I meet you in Greece. Thank you, Mr. Georgiadis. So moving forward, we spoke earlier about innovation and creativity. And Mr. Theoharis, I'd like to touch upon what I believe most would agree has been a silver lining of the pandemic in Greece, which has been a fast tracking of the country's digitization efforts. In fact, in April, the Ministry of Tourism unveiled an initiative dubbed Greece from Home. What was the vision behind the establishment of this initiative, and what is the feedback you received?
Indeed, this crisis, of course, every crisis has opportunities, creates change, movement, and through the movement, of course, that's the basic definition of opportunities. So during this crisis, we had, even before, a strategic goal to move towards more digitalization of the services, because this is what the customer needs. This is what the customer has been asking. And of course, this crisis accelerated those trends. So what we saw during this period was a fast tracking of a lot of initiatives in many ministries. I don't want to say that our ministry was, if you like, very different, but digital services were a requirement as far as tourism is concerned, if we wanted to keep some kind of connection of relevance during the time where traveling was not allowed, where we were in the first phase of the lockdowns. We're back again into that phase, but back in March, April, and May, the lockdowns were in full swing. So we gave GNTO, the Greek National Tourism Organization, a very specific brief, which was to implement campaigns that fostered this kind of connectivity while respecting the situation of everyone that we're in. A situation that meant that sometimes their loved ones were in hospital, or they lost some loved ones. They were in difficult economic situation, or whatever this might be. As a result, GNTO, for the first time this year, implemented 4 different campaigns. It started with Greece from Home, which was very, very innovative. It was even mentioned during Bill Gates' interview, so it reached the highest levels and accolades. We continued with a campaign about Destination Greece Health First, which was when we restarted to showcase the kind of health protocols that we're implementing and make everyone feel safe when they're in Greece. We also had Greece Eternal Summer, which was a campaign to continue the emotional connection with the clientele, the people that have come to Greece or are willing or planning to come to Greece. And finally, now we have a fourth campaign related to the North Aegean Islands, Greece for You. So those kind of campaigns where people from initially in the beginning, Greece from Home, people from their home could upload videos and show parts of Greece, ideas about Greece, to the rest of the world. As I said, this was very important, but this was only one aspect of our digital initiatives. The second aspect was the aspect of the application, Visit Greece app, which we created for the first time, and people downloaded in troves. We had 550,000 people download the application, 450,000 of them registered with their prefaces and details, and this allowed them to have a much more complete and digital experience, the people that came to Greece this year. If you consider that we had about 4.5 million visitors this year, a small percentage of what we normally do, but a great success given the current circumstances. Downloading the digital asset, the Visit Greece app, in more than 10%, it's a huge success, and if you like, it's up there in the top successful applications of tourism board. So the digital initiatives were timely. I think they were very, very innovative on a global scale, and they were they met a lot of success by the willingness of people to embrace them.
Oh, thank you. Basically, the campaign's primary goal, from what I didn't understand, was to send a message of support to those experiencing the unprecedented crisis. But it was also a strategic action to support Greek tourism while preparing for the next day. And I saw that you mentioned in previous interviews that in addition to taking measures to protect public health, shield and restart the economy and rebuild Greek society, the government also took steps to strengthen and manage the image of our country as a tourism destination, like you mentioned during your speech. Now, I'd like to steer the conversation towards the brain drain we discussed earlier with Mr. Adonis Georgiadis, and I'd like to, speaking of people who left Greece, to either study or find better employment opportunities, I'd like to ask Mr. Bakoyannis a question, because I know he also lived and worked abroad for a few years, and I'm sure he can relate to the situation of many students and young professionals who are currently living abroad. Mr. Bakoyannis, what would you advise students that are thinking about a career in public service and thinking about your path so far? What would you advise your younger self? What should students not fail to take advantage of?
Well, that's a pretty big question, and I'm not sure I'm old enough to answer it. But trying to think back to my time in college, I was at Brown in Rhode Island, in another era, in another lifetime. I think there are, again, three things. I mean, there are always three things, but now there are three things for real. Number one should actually care and be committed. I'm constantly surprised by the number of people in politics and in public service I meet who just are not committed enough. They don't care enough. At the end of the day, if your heart is not into it, and if you're just going for a career, there are much easier careers, which are also much better paid. Number two, I remember again back in the day, I was reading an interview of Ben Bradley. I don't know how many of you actually remember Ben Bradley. He was a senator back in the day. He was also a Rhodes Scholar and a very successful basketball player. He ran for the nomination, I think, of the Democratic Party or something like that. And he was saying that, when everyone else was asleep, he was at the court throwing balls. So it's about work. It's about putting in the work. It's about the hours. And number three, which I think is also very important, one should know that this is a tough job. It's a tough job, not because it's complicated, not only because it requires a number of skills. It's tough on our personal lives, it's tough on our families, it's tough on our children. So it should be very, very clear that if one really wants to go into it, what at the end it all boils down to one word: passion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. The only thing I would add to what you said, and I'm sure you would agree with me as well, is that a key factor in a student's likelihood to succeed is also building strong relationships. And when I mean relationships, I mean relationships with family, friends, professors, mentors, and other supportive adults. And by building these strong relationships early on, students feel supported and important. And NHSA's vision is predicated on that very principle. We strive to build strong relationships with the future leaders of the Hellenic community and provide them with opportunities to grow and succeed in their future endeavors. Would you agree on this?
I would, absolutely. I think it's not only important for one's success, it's important about one's balance and well-being. Looking back to school, looking back to my undergrad and my grad degrees, I know that may actually sound rather surprising, but it wasn't so much. It's not so much the academic part I remember. It's the friends, the classmates, who I've learned so much from. And I'm very grateful to all of them. And I feel extremely fortunate and privileged that I'm still in contact with many of them, although they're spread around the globe.
I see. Thank you. Speaking of success and future endeavors in general, I have a question for the Minister of Tourism, Mr. Theoharis. Minister, there has been a lot of talk about what the future is going to look like and the overriding changes this pandemic is going to bring about across sectors, but particularly in the travel industry. Things ranging from digital health passports to contactless travel. What changes do you foresee in the travel industry?
Well, this is the million-dollar question, I guess. If we could foresee the future, I'm not sure the situation how different it would be able to be. But what we currently are seeing is, if you like, we can say three things that are, I guess, strategically pinned down. The first is that we see some of the trends that we saw before to be accelerating. So digitalization, like we mentioned before, the move towards more sustainable development, some of the questions about safety, trust, which are at the core of the touristic product. You tend to go to a country where you feel that you will be able to withstand any kind of eventuality or shock or something that happens. They become more and more prominent during this. One thing. The second is that contactless is going to be the name of the game for the foreseeable future, and we need to bridge the gap between now, which is a situation where we have open travel, but a very fragmented environment. If you were a tour operator in Europe, and I'm saying Europe because Europe is more coordinated than other areas because of the EU institutions. if you were a tour operator in Europe, you would have to keep a spreadsheet every day with all the countries of source, where people come from, where they're going on a horizontal, and what happens on the flight going and then on the flight back. Different quarantine measures, different rules. You're not allowed to go to Crete, but you're allowed to go to Mykonos, or the other way around. If you come back from Portugal, you stay 14-day quarantine, etc., etc. A very, very difficult situation. Now, we need to move to the next level, and we have the tools, in my view, to move to the next level, and the tools are the fast tests. So we have made a concrete proposal. We're pushing for that in United Nations WTO, and we created a special team which I'm overseeing to formulate the policy paper on how to restart tourism. We are pushing for it under EU rules, and of course under the health committee experts for Greece, to at least create some pilot projects. So this is the second area that we need to push for if we are to see a meaningful recovery for next year. Everybody hopes that the vaccine will be here sooner rather than later. Excuse me, but we're not certain of the timing of this and when it will actually make a difference in terms of the travel arrangements. So we have to plan as if the vaccine is not here, at least for the full year or the half year of next year. And the third thing that one has to say is that we see a very polarized environment. We see the high end of the market moving forward quickly. The high end of the hotels, for example, had a much better year this year than the mid-range hotels, which this was, if you like, a reversal of the previous tendency. So we don't see all the trends being accelerated. Some of the trends are being reversed as well. What's certain is that we need a lot more cooperation, and we need, if you like, a five-pronged plan in order to restart tourism again. My proposal, which I have made publicly, speaks about, of course, the acceleration of vaccine and the research and the implementation of the vaccine, because that's the end game for tourism. But at the same time, we need to support the industry. We need to harmonize the rules. We need to strategically realign the products that we offer, and we need to offer a short-term protection for the travelers in order to ensure that they feel safe, and we rebuild the trust that is at the cornerstone of the touristic product.
So basically, the main challenge, from what I understand, is to strike a balance between safety and travel experiences, and if anything. Yeah, Greece, if anything, has become stronger during this difficult period. And I think that we should continue to work hard to strengthen our brand name and ensure that we keep the nugget, the core of the beauty of the experience of Greece, which is our open arms and our warm heart and the warm smile.
Indeed. Let me add that this is not something that we're just saying, that you're saying because you're Greek, or I because I'm the Minister of Tourism. The Greek brand is indeed stronger. Just 2 days ago, the Ipsos Anhalt Nation Brand Index put again Greece on the 5th position in the world as a tourist brand. We sort of replaced the US from that position. So we are actually, the brand of Greece is stronger, is better, even if the current situation for everyone is a very, very difficult situation.
Exactly. Now, looking towards the future, Mr. Mayor, apart from countries, cities are also transforming around the world. And there is a silent revolution taking place where cities are transitioning to an era after the automobile. And you've made it clear that you don't want Athens to fall behind in this global race. You have ambitious plans for the city, and you have hinted a little bit that you aim to reinvent the city of Athens and reclaim some of its space. Can you tell us a little bit more about these plans?
Well, at the end of the day, it's about whether we will actually bounce back after the pandemic or whether we will bounce forward. History teaches us that pandemics, or generally a public health crisis, have been catalysts for urban renewal. The most famous example is probably New York Central Park, but one doesn't need to look too far in London. The sewage system itself was the city's response to another public health crisis. So what we are seeing right now around the world is a global competition. It's a global competition among cities for 3 prizes. Number 1, investment. Number 2, talent. And number 3, visitors or tourists. Up to now, because of the financial crisis of the past decade, because Athens hasn't really joined this race. It's about time we do. And that's what we're trying to do. We began with the pilot phase, the first phase of the Grand Walk. It's a project that has steered a very lively conversation in the city of Athens. I personally welcome this conversation. I think that's one of the key goals that we try to achieve. And generally, our framework, our policy framework, or our philosophy, if you will, has 3 stated goals. Number 1, sustainable mobility. Number 2, reclaiming or liberating public space. And number 3, to make sure that we retain the character of the city. That is the competitive advantage of Athens. We don't want Athens to turn into a theme park. We're not competing with Dubai. We want Athens to be equally proud of its past as it is of its future.
Yeah, this is indeed a very ambitious plan that you have sketched out for Athens. But what's important to note here is that the main idea is that you actually want to change the city, not only to improve the quality of life of the Athenians themselves, but also to attract more tourists, like you said, and help them to discover destinations and be inspired by the city's beauties and its culture. So clearly, there is a lot of room to grow since there's a very positive momentum right now. I heard one of your past interviews where you said that only around Omonia Square, 20 new hotels are being created as we speak. So there is a lot of investment that's being made, and the city has to catch up with what the private sector is doing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we have a number of audiences, quote unquote. Number 1, of course, are permanent residents. Number 2, those who work in the city of Athens. Number 3, those who visit the city. And number 4, the tourists. In terms of numbers, the permanent residents of the city are around 630, 650,000. But we serve, not in a status of quarantine, but under normal circumstances, more than 2.5 million people every day. Now, that's the strength of Athens. And of course, Athens belongs to the Athenians, but Athens belongs to the Greeks, and Athens belongs to the whole world. This is not just another city. This is Athens, and the new Athens will be Athens itself.
Exactly. I know that we're running out of time, so I'd like to move on to the questions we received from the audience. I'd like to hand it over to George. George, do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes, we have a question for both the Minister Theoharis and Mayor Bakoyannis. How can young professionals, Greek organizations, and chambers of commerce contribute to the initiatives that they have put into place?
Mr. Bakoyannis, would you like to take the floor?
Well, in a number of ways. Number one, if I may be as frank and as direct as possible, you guys are ambassadors. You're ambassadors in the US, especially now through social media. You have the space to actually convey the message of Greece. And this is a message that transcends political and ideological lines. It's not the message of the Mitrakos government, it's not the message of Theoharis, it's not the message of Bakoyannis, it's the message of all Greeks, that we have been through a very tough time. I mean, in the history of recorded modern economics, there has never been such a financial crisis in peacetime. And yet, we got out of this crisis with a newly found sense of optimism and self-confidence. Yes, the pandemic came at a particularly cruel time, but there's been an unprecedented mobilization that has taken place in this country. There is a very strong social contract, and that I think actually gives a lot of ground for optimism. So your role can be catalytic in actually conveying this message. And of course, at the same time, when we're talking about messages, and that brings me to the second point, this is not a one-way street. This is a two-way street. What we need from you is actually to, we need your thinking, we need your ideas, we need your input. Constructive criticism for some reason is criminalized in Greece. But, as someone who's studied in the US, I greatly welcome it. And I happen to know that Harris as well, and this government as well. So, don't be nice with us. We very much welcome your thoughts, your ideas, and your criticism.
Well, there are very few words that you can add to what Mayor Bakoyannis just said. Let me just point you in two directions. One is that the brand of Greece is you, is us. You can hold your head up high and sort of proudly pronounce that you're Greeks. Because Greece has come back from being the black sheep of the family, as it were, during the past 10 years, to being a model for everyone to follow. The first part of the crisis, but I would argue the second part of the crisis as well, where there's been no clear leadership. I think Greece has shown this kind of leadership. I'll point a very small example. The kind of system that we put in place in the borders with data scientists from the US, from California, in our borders, the EVA system was a system that used artificial intelligence, machine learning, to target the testing that we did of anyone coming to Greece during this crisis, and managed to increase its effectiveness compared to random testing about 2.5 times, and at times around 4 times than random testing. This allowed us to keep the safety in check while we had the borders open. So this kind of innovation is, if you like, that people like you can bring to the table, and we're very proud when Greeks take part in this kind of innovation, whether it's the people behind EVA system, Professor Thomopoulos, or the head of Pfizer, Mr. Bourla, who's at the forefront of the current search for a vaccine for this crisis. The second point I would like to make is that this kind of leadership can be joined or can be used with reversing the brain drain. Greece has been shown that it's a perfect place to live and work from afar. The new mode of working from abroad or from home or from a different place than the actual premises of a corporation is becoming the norm, and that gives a lot of opportunities. for people to come to Greece. We have already two kind of schemes to bring expats with low taxation. We are already thinking about a third scheme to bring people that currently work so that they can live most of the time in Greece and at the same time be able to participate in the normal business activities through some means like this one that allowed us to create this virtual event despite the fact that we are all in different places. So those kind of initiatives are initiatives that you could make richer, and certainly you could make them known to your friends, or even take advantage of those initiatives yourselves.
So essentially, we can all be Greece's ambassadors and try to promote Greece however possible. Well, indeed, we have a really challenging portfolio in our hands, all of us. But I would like to say that the biggest takeaway in our conversation today, and especially with what Mr. Georgiadis said earlier about all the reforms that the new administration has done and the collaborations with external investors, is that our economy needs to be more balanced in the future, because right now we are dependent on one sector only, tourism. And this makes us more vulnerable to crisis. If you remember, back in the 70s and 80s, Greece was a significant industrial power. And yet 40 years later, the sector size is minimal. Now, if you provide the right incentives to drive the growth and find ways to be more competitive, I'm sure that we will be able to restart the economy, to improve the reputation of our country, connect more effectively Greek scientific research with innovation in the market, and consequently support entrepreneurship and our brand. George, do we have any other questions for either minister or the mayor?
Yes, we have a question for Mayor Bakoyannis.
Mm-hmm.
So you've mentioned that you're already working on a very ambitious project of creating an archaeological walkway around the city of Athens known as the Grand Walk. What was the inspiration? What will it look like? And how will you define its success?
Well, Athens is inspiration. What will it look like? That's something that we will announce in the upcoming weeks, in the upcoming months. We're actually going to move forward with certain projects within 2021. And what will it look like at the end? Well, no one project will resemble another. For example, Platia Theatru is very different than Vasilis Olgas, for example. But that's actually our goal. Athens is a city of surprises. It's a city of paradoxes. We don't want a homogeneous, uniform sense in the city. I mean, we are not trying to build a new Brasilia. It's what urban planners call collage cities, which actually reflect our strengths and our competitive advantages moving forward.
Great. I don't think we have time for another question. So thank you very, very much, gentlemen, for being here with us today. Before you leave, I'd like to ask you to stay on the line a little longer, because in a moment we will be announcing the two winners of our scholarship initiative, which was designed with the purpose of supporting students of Hellenic descent in reaching their academic and career goals. And in awarding these scholarships, which are supported by donations from the broader Hellenic community, we aim to inspire the younger Greek generation to work hard, not only to better themselves, but to also develop a stronger and more united Hellenic diaspora. Again, it's been a pleasure. We wish you every success in your endeavors. And from our side, we do hope to enjoy the beauties of Greece as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Take good care.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you again to our panelists. I did want to say that something that Mayor Bakoyannis said really stuck out to me about leaders talking less and listening more. And I think that that's something that can be applied to everyone, not just people in positions of leadership. And that is truly how we will affect change in this world. I heard a quote recently that said that active listeners listen to understand rather than listening to reply. And that's part of why I love doing what I do here with NHSA. I get to listen to wonderful, insightful, and much smarter people than me, and hopefully learn from them. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to award some of the brightest students of Hellenic descent who are pursuing an education in North America. Presenting the Ariston NHSA Scholarship Awards are President of Ariston Foundation, Fulbright Scholar, and graduate of Northwestern Pritzker School of Law, Vasiliki Mitrakos, joined by former NHSA President and fourth-year medical school student at the University of Maryland School of Medicine, Alexander Thomopoulos.
Thank you, Yanni, for that introduction. I would like to share a few words about the Ariston Foundation NHSA Scholarship. During my presidency, one of my overarching goals for NHSA was to expand our organization's influence and initiatives beyond hosting the biannual conventions. For a long time, NHSA had planned on creating a scholarship to give back to students of Hellenic descent. This vision became a reality through our collaboration with Ariston Foundation, an organization that shares a similar mission with NHSA, which is to promote Hellenism and the youth. I'm proud that the initiative is now in its second year, and I look forward to continue awarding students of Hellenic descent who have demonstrated our values of pedia, aristia, and kinonia, personal growth, learning, and commitment to the Greek community. And as a reminder to our audience, one of the core features of this scholarship is that it is purely merit-based and available to undergraduate and graduate students alike throughout North America. Vasiliki?
Thank you, Alex, for your kind words. As president of Ariston Foundation, I would also like to acknowledge NHSA's leadership in helping put this initiative together. And of course, a heartfelt thank you to all of our donors who supported our scholarship fund, most of whom are actually young professionals. This initiative is a great example of Greek youth giving back in a direct and impactful way to promising young Hellenes throughout our community. Now, before we announce the scholarship recipients, I would like to first present the Ariston Honor Society. Alex, please bring up our slides. The Ariston Honor Society is a select group of students who are publicly acknowledged for their high academic and leadership achievements among the scholarship applicants. Inducted into this year's Ariston Honor Society are Maria Agoris at Loyola University Chicago studying biology, Alex Besieris at University of Michigan School of Dentistry pursuing a doctorate of dental surgery, Sofia Dimos at Georgia Institute of Technology studying environmental engineering, Metaxenia Evangelioudis at George Washington University studying psychology with minors in statistics and organizational sciences, Nicoleta Gasparis at State University of New York at Stony Brook, studying English, Spanish language and literature, Galiopi Anastasia Kurti at Stanford University, studying computational and mathematical engineering, Alexandra Yotopoulos at Queens College, Flushing, studying political science, and Maria Mouchlidis at Stevens Institute of Technology, studying mathematical engineering with a biomedical engineering concentration. Congratulations again to the Ariston Honor Society inductees. All of you have shown a strong commitment to your education while also serving as leaders in your respective communities. And now, virtual drum roll, please. The 2020 Ariston Foundation and NHSA scholarship recipients are
Michael Evangelopoulos at Northwestern University studying biomedical engineering. Michael holds several leadership positions in his field and within Hellenic organizations. His current research merges nanotechnology and oncology, exploring possibilities that make diagnostics more accessible in rural communities and to find therapies that can eradicate diseases like cancer. And our second scholarship recipient is Konstantinos Ouranatsis at Fordham University Kibali School of Business, pursuing a master's in business administration. Konstantinos has a distinguished leadership and volunteering track record and is notably one of the founders of Ethylon, formerly known as Global, which is Greece's premier platform for volunteering and building communities. Collectively, the organization has volunteered over 1 million hours towards service. Congratulations again, and a big round of applause to our recipients and the Honor Society inductees. Alex, a few words?
Yes, of course. This is a remarkable group of people, and in order to support our efforts of rewarding future scholarship recipients, we'd like to remind our audience that the scholarship fundraiser is still open, and you can still make a donation to the Ariston NHSA scholarship. Donors receive a complimentary copy of Portes magazine. You can find more information on how to support us at nhsaofamerica.org. And I believe that one of our board members will also be sharing that link in the chat with all of you here. Please share it with your parents and your friends and family. Thank you.
So congratulations once again to our star students of 2020, the winners of the Ariston NHSA Scholarship, and of course, the new members of our Ariston Honor Society. Your achievements are truly remarkable. Que sanotera. Up next, we have a talk on transforming the business landscape with President and CEO of Earth Friendly Products, Kelly Vlahakis-Hanks. Ms. Kelly Vlahakis-Hanks is internationally recognized for her highly effective leadership and influential voice in the green movement and corporate social responsibility. She drives Earth Friendly Products' mission to protect the health and wellness of people, pets, and the planet by creating the most authentic, sustainable, and affordable cleaning products for all. Our moderator this time around is NHSA Chairman Konstantine Ouranatsis. Welcome to both.
Thank you for the introduction. And Kelly, how's everything? Thank you for joining us.
Oh, wonderful. It's wonderful to be here with you all this morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for accepting the invitation. And as you may remember, we met back a couple of years ago at Drexel University when you spoke at one of my Greek studies classes. And then we had a film screening for A Green Story, also at Drexel. And since then, I've been like, I need to get Kelly at our convention, and I'm glad you're able to join us, and I'm thrilled that you're here with us.
No, I appreciate that. I can remember clearly being at Drexel with Theodore Katarinakis and I think Vassleios Nasis, who's on the conference today. It was wonderful being there, and especially having the university play A Green Story about my father's life story and our company story as well.
It was definitely a great film, and it was good to be part of that event with the screening. And before we kick off, I just want to remind the audience that there's a Q&A button on the bottom of the screen. If there's any questions, we're happy to look into those and ask them afterwards. But I'd like to just kick off with kind of a more general topic, but it's also something that's important to me and a topic that NHSA continuously kind of harps on and looks to speak on, and that's leadership. So what is one or a few important traits that you have that you feel have helped you throughout your life, and since you've been taking over Earth Friendly Products, how has that impacted the growth there?
Well, you know what, I would say so many of the leadership skills that I initially developed, I honed when I was president of the Hellenic American Students Organization at UCLA. And it's so wonderful to speak to everyone here today, because I think that was such a strong beginning and a great foundation for me while I was president, and that was, more than 20 years ago. So many skills, whether it was public speaking, whether it was networking, whether it was understanding the principles of servant leadership, which I think is very important for people to understand. Servant leadership is something I read back in the late 1990s. There's a great book called The Servant, and it talks about how great leaders really, number one, prioritize the well-being of their team. They serve their needs, they respond to their concerns, And those leaders really go on to be great transformational leaders. And at UCLA, during those initial formative years, I really had a chance to work both as a servant leader and to really represent our student community in the larger organizations, and eventually go on to even one of my jobs after getting out of UCLA was as the executive director of the American Hellenic Council, which many of you on the call might know actually serves as a lobbying organization on issues affecting Greece and Cyprus. So those were some great skills that I really garnered early on in my academic career that have served me very well now in my current profession. A lot of the relationships that I made with members of Congress are relationships that I still have intact today when I travel to DC to lobby for ingredient transparency, or when I want to make sure to create better workplaces, if we're talking about corporate social responsibility or sustainable business practices. So I think those are a lot of the things from those years.
Yeah, and I completely agree with a lot of what you said. And I think it's important that, you mentioned you read a book, and it's important that people do read books. I think that's one of the statistics that I'm like blanking on the number, but CEOs read X number of books a year. And yes. I think that that's important. And would you agree with that? And what's your kind of favorite books that you read?
I couldn't agree more. You know, JFK has a wonderful quote that I absolutely love. And it says that leadership and learning are indispensable to one another. And it's so true, because as a leader, you must always be learning. I remember when I went back to do my MBA after becoming executive vice president, and people wondered, why would you need to do an MBA at this point? Because I always wanted to carve out the time and the attention to be learning. We have a rapidly changing competitive landscape. And so every single day, there's new technologies, there's new innovations, there's new ways of looking at the business. And being able to hear ideas and bring those ideas into the fold of your organization to build stronger organizations is of critical importance. Even during this challenging year with the pandemic, I took 2 weeks to do in the evenings a virtual academic program through USC. They have a food industry management executive program. And it was terrific. I got a chance to hear from the top retailers in the country, understand what they were focused on so that I could better serve their needs once again. So it was really, you always have to be learning. I'm in a YPO group, the Young Presidents Organization. And, we all talk about trying to get to at least 20 to 25 books a year, despite our hectic schedules, because there's just so many great learnings out there. So I would absolutely encourage people to be voracious and avid readers and to always challenge yourself. I mean, there's nobody that knows everything. And so it doesn't matter what professional level you rise to, there's always the opportunity to learn from others and grow.
That's for sure. And what would you say, like one of your favorite books? I mean, you mentioned The Servant before, but another one of your favorite books that you recommend?
So I'd say, Jim Collins has written a few that I love. Most recently, I just read From Good to Great and thought it was terrific.
Yeah, that's actually on my shelf and on my list to
Good.
read. So.
He also wrote Built to Last. And obviously, I'm very interested in creating a business that lasts for generations.
That's for sure. And we'll definitely be touching a little bit more on that. But just to ask another question on the leadership topic, what advice would you give to women, or just in general to those trying to emulate kind of your career path, rising in the ranks of your company, becoming a CEO? And what would you tell them?
Excellent question. We need more women in leadership roles. It's of critical importance. And the science is irrefutable. Diverse teams perform better. They perform better because they serve their customer better. They perform better financially. When I put together my leadership team at Earth Friendly Products, 52% of it is comprised of women. Mm-hmm. And I'm really proud of that number. But what I would say to women, it's extremely important to take a seat at the table. It's important to be brave, to be courageous, to not be afraid to share your ideas, to look outside the current scope of your job and think always about how you can add value to the business. I think so often people think, okay, this is my scope of work. These are the defined things that I should be doing. But anytime you create additional value, you really allow people to see the abilities and the capabilities that you have. I think education is extremely important. So I know everyone on the call today shares that value. But it's important to constantly be learning, creating, and to really, like I said, look to create value at all moments. I won't, a few years ago when I opened our manufacturing facilities in Greece, and we debuted our Made in Greece offering at Hell Expo in Vasiliki. I'll never forget being interviewed by one of the reporters at Kathimerini, and he had read the press release saying that more than half of my team was comprised of women. And it was so funny. He literally asked me if I was trying to build a company to get rid of men. I was so shocked by this question. And I simply said, no, I'm trying to build a company that's reflective of society. 53% of our society is comprised of women. Certainly, I would want my management team to be a representation of that. So you can see we still have a long way to go, and having more women really lead in and make sure their voices is heard is very important.
I couldn't agree more. And I think a little bit what we were touching on before was kind of corporate responsibility and company culture. So can you describe a little bit more about what Earth Friendly Product does on that front and kind of why that's important to you?
Absolutely. Well, our mission since our inception has been to protect people, pets, and the planet. So for over 53 years, we've been making green cleaning products with the idea of promoting health and wellness and really protecting personal health and planetary health. And we are a family-owned and operated business. As you mentioned, my father started the company 67. I lost him many years ago, but he was a wonderful, passionate, visionary leader. And when I took over and wanted to scale the company for growth and bring in a lot of functional leaders and make sure that we could meet the global demand for green cleaning, it was important to me to keep our company culture intact, to make sure that I hired for people that understood our work culture. And that culture is built on servant leadership, right? So when I talked earlier about taking care of your team's needs, we implemented one of the highest minimum wages in the nation with $17 an hour put in place in 2014 for all of our production teams. PPO insurance, paid maternity leave, paternity leave, lots of incentives for green living, $2,500 if you put solar on your rooftops, $2,500 if you get a green car, trying to do different things to really encourage a culture of connectivity, of warmth, of family, and to really ensure that our team members serve as ambassadors, green ambassadors in their community, that they go back and that they're really living our mission. And so, really taking care of the needs of our team members has also served our company very well during this crisis. I will never forget as a leader what March 16th felt like. The entire world was shutting down and we were ramping up because cleaning products were the #1 weapon in the war on COVID. Yeah. And so as people returned home, we had to make sure to make 2, 3, 8 times our orders came in that Monday. And it was so beautiful to see our team really rise and come together and make sure to service our nation in its time of need in our world. And a lot of that was built on the culture we had created. Because with culture, you have trust, you have loyalty, you have commitment. And as a leader, it was important to me to be there every day with them and to show that we would stand together. And I'm really proud of the work that my team did during the pandemic. And I think it just shows how critically important it is to establish culture early on.
Yeah, I agree. And then as far as kind of corporate responsibility, what programs have you started either through the pandemic or had beforehand that you're very proud of?
Oh, I think some of the things that I mentioned, the minimum wage is an important discussion in our country and across the world, having fair wages for team members. I've been on so many different programs talking about the importance of paying fair wages. And so we certainly have wage compaction. Those on top aren't making huge salaries. But at the production teams, you don't come in making less than 17, and that's important. And I think that as business owners, we need to really have conversations around what makes sense for our business in the long term. I think so many people are really driven by short-term capitalism and not long-term value. And when you take care of your team members, they stay with you. You have the retention of corporate memory, you have reduced turnover, you have better productivity, you have higher quality products. There's so many things that hit your bottom line when you don't take care of your team. So, fair wages, obviously all the green programs, we even brought in chefs to work with everybody on creating, healthy diets at home. And it's all these little things that add up, right, to the big equation. And then, I think I really want to serve as a champion too for these initiatives and show that they work and they make financial sense along with being the right thing to do for people on the planet.
And then I know that I've seen some of the internship programs you've had, but what kind of, if you can explain a little bit more about your program or other educational programs that the company offers.
Sure. Interns are such a wonderful part of our team. So at any given time, we have about 20 different interns within our organization. We have interns in our Department of Sustainability. And if I could just tell you what a great department to intern with, my VP of Sustainability, she has her PhD in life cycle analysis and in education. And she achieved zero waste in all of our manufacturing facilities. So if you could imagine, we're servicing some of the world's largest retailers like Walmart and Target and Sam's Club. And she's done such a great job. And a lot of the work has been done by our fabulous interns. We have internship programs in our finance department, in our legal department. And they really are truly such an important part of our organization. We've hired a lot of our interns that have joined us. When I was at UCLA, internships were key to my success. Having the ability early in my academic career and early in my professional life to intern and to connect with various mentors served me greatly. And giving back is important to me. We just, at the facility that we're in Orange County, California, we just created a partnership with UCLA and their Stavros Niarchos Center, with Chapman University, and the Agios School of Business. And it's wonderful to have the interns with us every day. We also do a lot of things to educate even younger students. So for instance, at every one of our manufacturing facilities, we have one in California, Illinois, Washington, New Jersey, and of course in Greece. We partner with museums. And so here in California, we have a wonderful education program where the students go into the museums and they learn about greening your cleaning and how to make better decisions when you're in the store. And at the same time, the museum educators have gone into, I think we've done about 12,000 fifth graders here to teach them about green science and how you can utilize the power of nature to do so much for us, and how we can be responsible stewards of our planet. And so whether they're in fifth grade or whether they're college students, they've just enriched our lives, and we're hoping to give back as well.
And it was great to hear about the zero waste. I know that your facilities are also carbon and water neutral. How did you kind of get to that? And what was the most difficult part to achieve that?
I mean, I will tell you, zero waste was a very challenging goal. I have to give a lot of credit to my VP of Sustainability for being a true champion of the initiative. It takes so much hard work. I mean, I would literally come to work and I would see her. Imagine a woman with 2 PhDs. She'd be in the trash bin with a plastic water bottle saying, "Who did this?" and walking our facilities wondering, "Who did this?" And so it took that level of commitment. I can remember when she had created a little walk of shame in our building where she would have like a plastic bag that someone had carrots in, and it would be on a wall, and it would say, "This should have been, these carrots should have been eaten. This plastic bag shouldn't have been around them." Like, she was constantly thinking of every single detail, but it really took that kind of conviction, that type of, enthusiasm. Very hard to get buy-in early on. So the thing is early on, she was met with so much resistance. I can remember her working with my plant managers and my general managers, and their focus was getting product out the door. And suddenly they're thinking, "Oh my goodness, now I have to worry about the backs of these labels." So what we did was we really wanted to champion the program in every way we could. We created Friends of the Earth so that if any team member came with any idea that could better our zero waste goals, we recognized them for their efforts. We celebrated them. We gave incentives. We had team members that came. I remember the backs of our labels in the beginning were not recyclable. And we were trying to work with our supplier to get it done. And a team member came and said, hey, I saw this program that NASA has where they're taking this material. Maybe we could do a partnership with NASA. I mean, there were so many great innovative ideas that came from all parts of the organization. We had to work obviously closely with our suppliers because supply chain mattered. We needed to make sure they understood our sustainability goals and were working hard to deliver products that were reusable first and foremost, because recycling was always our last effort. So just, if you could imagine, you know, boxes coming to us full of bottles, we would reuse those boxes over and over again until the end of life of that box, and then bail it and then recycle it. But it's hard to get to zero waste in your home. I mean, if you try it in your home, it's challenging. So doing it, you know, in manufacturing facilities across this country, she did a really brilliant job. And, you know, it took all of our leadership teams to believe in it, to champion it. But it also took getting the buy-in of each and every team member throughout the entire organization, because everyone had to do their part to get to zero waste.
And did you have to make sacrifices in the business in order to achieve those sustainable goals? Or where's the fine line between like sustainable and profitable?
You know, so once again, it's about looking at long-term value versus short-term value. I remember when we put solar panels on all of our facilities, that was a huge upfront initial investment. But now, so many years later, we have the free, limitless power of the sun running our facilities. So it depends how you look at it. Do you look at it in a short, finite amount of time, or do you look at the spend over time? The return on the investment is important to look at. And I often feel like business leaders aren't doing that. If you look at, you know, recycling, up until last year, we were getting paid for all of our recyclables. So it was fantastic. It was actually generating money for the company and reducing waste, reusing things. We're bringing down costs, because my supplier, who had to buy a new box every time he sent me those bottles, no longer had to do that, because every time he delivered, I was going to give him the boxes back, and, you know, you'd create these cycles. So we were actually able to reduce significant costs over time from our bottom line. And that's why I'm really passionate that you can do the right thing for business. You can 100% be pro-business and be pro-planet. And I see too often these things seem like they fall on different sides of the aisle, but we should all really all be focused around both. There's no reason not to be.
And then all your facilities obviously are the same way, they're all very green. How do you choose where to put a facility and kind of what goes into that?
Sure. So one of the things that we're always committed to is being carbon neutral. Very challenging to achieve carbon neutrality, but we did that by having these diverse manufacturing facilities. Oftentimes people will ask me, oh, so do you make one product here and another product there? No, we make every product in every facility, because we want to service you in your marketplace locally. I don't want to be shipping across country. There's no need to do that. So we've created, you know, facilities in places that have, you know, larger metro areas. So there's a higher population. So if you look at our New Jersey facility, just 30 minutes outside of Manhattan, Addison, Illinois, you know, just 40 minutes northwest of Chicago. Here in Orange County, I'm just about an hour south of LA. And in Lacey, Washington, I'm an hour south of Seattle. So large cities, you know, dense communities, green areas that are interested in purchasing our green products. We also look at the supply network to make sure that within a 500-mile radius, I can get things like bottles and boxes and the inputs that we need. And we also look at the distribution centers of our largest retail partners. So where are we delivering to? All of those things really add up to where we put our next facility.
And then one thing that I noticed that you have like an ingredients glossary that really specifies what products are for, what goes into it. Kind of what was the driving force of that? And do you think that that should be adopted across kind of all products? And what can we do to kind of get there?
Oh, I really do. Thank you for that question, because, you know, here in the United States, it's unbelievable. And obviously, I know we have team members from all of North America. Canada's doing a much better job than the US. In the United States right now, there is no requirement to disclose ingredients in cleaning products. So when you go to the store and you're buying a cleaning product, it might not say what's in that product. Yet we definitively now know that these ingredients are linked to cancer and asthma and nerve and organ damage and so many illnesses. And so you go into the grocery store, you can look at the back of the label of a food product you're buying and you can make an informed decision as a consumer, but you can't do the same for a cleaning product. Yet cleaning products have an effect on our health every day. You think about it, you wash the glass that you put your water in, right? You put your water in, now you're drinking that. If that glass is covered with caustics and things, you look at the back of an auto dish product and it's got skulls and crossbones and says, do not ingest. Yet every day you drink out of that glass and you're ingesting those chemicals. And it's unbelievable. And if we're not going to regulate the chemicals, then we at least need to give consumers a chance to know what's in it and make informed decisions. And so, I've been really fighting for ingredient transparency. We as a company always disclose. As you pointed out, you can go to our website and read. You can also look at the back of our label when you're in a grocery store, and you can see that our primary surfactants come from coconut, and you can see, the natural organic essential oils we're using and the other components, and that's important. And we live in an age where consumers have more access to information than they've ever had before. You have a forensic consumer who's on their mobile phone, who's Googling, who's searching. So building that trust by being transparent is key. I think all of us can agree that transparency is something that we seek in our everyday lives. We want to know, what are our political leaders doing? What are our business leaders doing? And brands matter more now than ever before. And so I feel really grateful that the consumers are rewarding us now for being transparent. That certainly wasn't the case for a long time. When I certainly know when my father started back in the 60s, people weren't even thinking about organic food. They certainly weren't thinking about greening or cleaning. But people do care now. They do realize the connectivity to human health. And we want to empower our consumers too. Here is something that you can do to protect the health of your family. And it's not just about what, we put in us and on us. It's about what's around us. And it's about the generations to come. So I'm glad that people are looking more at ingredients, and we should demand that government does a better job of requiring the disclosure. I'm actually really proud of California. It became the first state in the nation this year to require cleaning products to disclose ingredients online. I certainly hope, with 44 million people having to do it here, that'll change the rest of the nation. But Greece, Europe, they're ahead of it. They're ahead of it. They are requiring disclosures, and I'm proud of them for that because it's the right thing.
I hope that we're able to get there. Hopefully sooner than later.
Yes.
And I just want to shift gears just a little bit to kind of ask you a little bit about kind of what you value about your Hellenic roots and kind of how has that influenced your identity, either professionally or personally? Kind of where do you stand for that?
Oh, well, thank you for that question. I feel so lucky and fortunate that as a child, I had the opportunity to go back to Greece every summer and spend time with my family there. The family, the connectivity, the beauty of our country. Certainly in my early years, that was something that brought me so much joy and happiness. I grew up in a small town in Illinois, a town of just 3,000 people. And so when I moved to Los Angeles and went to UCLA at 18, a school of 40,000 students, it was a big transition for me. And I found so much support in our Greek community. I can remember my first day on Bruin Walk, walking past a friend of mine who remains a dear friend now. We do a lot of business together, Petros, and them holding up a Greek flag on Bruin Walk and saying, join the Greek club. And I can remember going up to join. He said, oh, this isn't a sorority. And I said, no, I understood that the Greek flag meant the country. But, in those early years, being part of, the Hellenic American Students Organization, going on, to work with the American Hellenic Council and to fight for Greece and Cyprus and stability was something so important. I can remember in 2003 crossing the Green Line to go into the occupied area of Cyprus. I even at UCLA, fighting for Greece, always fighting for Greece. I remember at the time when I was at UCLA, they had a chair in Turkish studies there, and they were teaching that there had been no Armenian genocide in 1915 or the Greek genocide, of course. And, as students really fighting to not allow for revisionist history. At the time, the Turkish government had given a check to UCLA for $700,000 with stipulations around what would be taught at the university. And as students, we got together and we fought it. And I'll never forget contacting Congressman Brad Sherman, who still serves in the United States House of Congress today, and him speaking on the floor of Congress about the fact that universities should not accept these monetary donations and be utilized as a vehicle for Turkish propaganda, and the university returning the funds. So, there was so much power we had as students, and that was really exciting to see that. And Greece is just something that, has always brought me so much joy, and obviously Western democracy, all of these things that, Greece brings to the table. But certainly after my father passed away, his lifelong dream was to always go back to Greece and create jobs and create green jobs. And so I was really proud to be able to start making our products in Greece in 2018. And especially during a time that our country had such a financial challenge, to be able to create jobs and create green jobs. And Greece is strategically located too to service Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So it makes sense for business leaders to build businesses in Greece to service those markets. But I really just, I've drawn so much. I'm of mixed descent, so I'm Greek and African American. And from both of my cultures, I've just found so much courage and strength.
Wow. And I think it's important that people do stand up for what they believe in, and that based on, what you just said, that Hellenic societies have the power to stand up and to promote what they believe in, promote the Greek ideals, and promote the things that are just blatantly not right.
Yes.
With that, I definitely want to turn over to the audience for a question or two. So Maddie, if you're on, if you want to read the first question that we have.
Sure. Hi, Kelly. Thank you again for being with us today. And
thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for everything that Earth Friendly Products does to protect our one and only planet and home. It's really great.
Thank you.
So the first question is, do you see potential for the next generation to be even more green conscious? And how can we incorporate sustainable practices into our everyday lives?
Oh, great question. Absolutely. The next generation is going to far outdo us in their commitment to our planet, the understanding. I mean, I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I'm so proud when I hear her speak about the environment from early on in her academic career, whether or not they were really focused on doing better for our planet. And it's part of the educational curriculum that I certainly didn't have growing up. When I grew up in Illinois, there was no focus on planetary health and making the right decisions for the long term. And I see a huge shift in that. I see a commitment from our young people. I'm so energized when I see people on social media and influencers and others really lending their voice and their talents to drive home the fact that climate change is the most important existential crisis we face. And we shouldn't forget that. And so I think that each and every day we have an opportunity to make decisions that have a large impact. All of you know that the action of one is so transformative. So whether it's modeling the right behaviors by simply, purchasing from sustainable brands, we should remember as young people, you have the ability to vote with your dollar every time you go into the grocery store. So when you walk into the store and you purchase a product, that is your vote for a brand and what that brand stands for. And so going in and voting for brands that are aligned with your values and your beliefs will change everything, because companies must respond to what consumers want. And we see that the millennials and we see that, the Z Gen are really focused on sustainability, and they're proud of it. They're wearing it, on their social media accounts, and it's cool and it's hip and it's something to be proud of. And so every single day, the simple things, whether it's turning off your lights, whether it's recycling, whether it's limiting the amount of water we use when we take showers, all of those things add up. But certainly sitting at the helm of a CPG company, I would be really passionate about vote with your dollars.
And I think we might have time for one more question, Maddie, if you want to.
Sure. I guess something special for all of us. Is there any advice you could give us on, what is the most vital element that you had to make your dreams or your purposes in life come to fruition?
a passion and a deep abiding belief in what I do. And when I say that, I mean, I wake up every single morning and I am excited about the work that I'm doing. I'm proud to sit at the helm of a business that's socially and environmentally responsible. I think in life, it's extremely important to be passionate about your profession and the life that you're building. We spend so much time working, studying, doing these things, and it's key that we do something that we love. Always, I know it's important to make money. I get that, but a real rich life and a life that is a beautiful life that keeps you committed is one that you're passionate about. And I believe that's the life that you'll have the most success in. And so for me, that's really driven me this entire time, you know, whether it was being president of the American Hellenic Council or president of the Students Organization, or, you know, I worked for others for 5 years before joining our family business. When I joined our family business in 2003, we were much smaller than we are today, right? There were about 8 of us in the office that I was in an 8,000 square foot facility. The one that I just moved us into after my father passed here was 125,000 square feet, plus 5 more across the country. But it's built by a lot of hard work. I spend a lot of hours, a lot of time, a lot of energy, but passion drives me and a real belief in what I do. And I would hope for everybody to really find in life that thing that gets you up every morning, excited, engaged, and enthusiastic to take on another day.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. This was a very insightful conversation. It was a great pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to having you again, hopefully in the near future.
Thank you. Great pleasure to be here with you all. Appreciate it. Appreciate the work you all do.
Thanks so much.
Thank you on our side as well, Mrs. Vlahakis-Hanks, for addressing these important business issues, increasing productivity, sustainability, and social responsibility, supporting fair wages, and women, men, and young professionals in business. And thank you for sharing your experience standing up for Cyprus and Greece as a student. It was a pleasure having you join us today. And speaking of Cyprus, joining us next is Executive Director of the Hellenic American Leadership Council, Endy Zemmenides, who will speak about current events in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Endy Zemmenides spent over a decade at the intersection of policy and politics. He practiced law in Chicago, specializing in municipal law and government relations. He served as senior advisor for Illinois State Treasurer and Democratic candidate for Senate, Alexei Yanoulias, a fellow Boston University graduate, might I add, my alma mater. Zemmenides presently serves on the board of directors for College Year in Athens and on the University of Chicago Booth School of Business's Civic Scholars Program Advisory Committee.
Hi, everyone, and congrats to the NHSA again for you're always pulling off a great convention. And despite COVID, I'm looking at the participants and attendees. You're doing it again. So congratulations to you all. I want to build off of your theme of change and innovation, and I've been asked to address how do you guys understand the East Med, and I think your theme and the East Med are related, because 10 years ago, or even when we started HALC, if somebody told you that the East Med, they knew that the East Med today was going to look the way it does, they're lying to you. This has been an unbelievably dynamic situation. Your parents never imagined a trilateral of Israel, Greece, and Cyprus. They certainly did not imagine something like the East Med Gas Forum. And I'm sure no one even here imagined a day where all of Greece would be proclaiming Vive la France because Macron is stronger than anybody in the world in terms of standing up to Turkey. So to start with understanding the East Med, just take it for granted that there's no definitive answer. There's no definitive work that you can look to. Anybody who's going to tell you, hey, kids, come here and listen to me, and this is the way the East Med is going, they don't know, because, again, they 2 years ago, none of them would have bet on the Abraham Accords. You are really in a constantly changing situation, a very dynamic situation, and you're on the front lines of history. And that's something you should not, I just heard Kelly talk about her student activism. Do not discount what you can do on a couple fronts. First of all, there's the student activism that Kelly just spoke about. You all have a voice. If you're not using it, it's too bad, because I think you have a chance to influence things. There are some people, Kostas, and some of you are, there are others here who are in part of our Leadership 2030 program, and there's other people on here who've been part of our lobbying days in Washington, and they didn't think that they were going to do anything at the time, or they were going to have much of an effect. But when they came out and they got a congressman's vote for the East Med Act, which passed and has shaped in the last 2 years policy in the Eastern Mediterranean, they did make that difference. And this is something that Greek students have been doing forever. I unfortunately lost my dad this summer, but as you know, as I was writing his story, I remember when he was a student during the junta in Greece, and he was over here. He was an activist, a pro-democracy activist with effect. There are students throughout history that have done that. When I was in law school, I worked with students who fought against the Burmese junta. They didn't think they were going to ever see the light of the day, but they did, and they got Aung San Suu Kyi out of prison. So I want you guys all to dream about what kind of role, what kind of future you want to see for Greece or for Cyprus or for U.S. interests in the Eastern Mediterranean, and then ask yourselves what you can do. Another thing that you can do, because we are talking about the National Hellenic Students Association, and you're better positioned than any other Greek group, is to try to affect the debate through your own scholarship. If you do a deep dive, and I'm sure there's plenty of you who are in law school or aspiring lawyers, if you look at the history, for example, of the Second Amendment, it was students starting to write law review notes that started making the case for the Second Amendment as an individual right. Before you were born, before I was even in high school, you had Supreme Court justices saying that the idea of the Second Amendment as an individual right, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court called it a constitutional fraud, but students wrote and wrote and wrote, they changed minds. You saw the same thing at the American Enterprise Institute. And you guys can do a lot with the research just for your own classes. And I will put this out there, and I'll coordinate through Kostas or whoever else wants to do it. Anybody who wants to do research on the East Med and needs access to high-ranking officials or to scholars or to think tanks and want to get their work published, you come to me, we will help you. We will get you that access. We will get you firsthand research material, and we will help get you published. This is a time to make history. There was a Chinese curse that goes something like this: may you live in interesting times. Well, we knocked that one out of the park. You have a chance as students, as a generation that I think could be the ones, when there's light at the end of the tunnel, be leading all of society to affect the debate right now. Now, I want to take more questions from you and see what specifics you want to know about the Eastern Mediterranean or where you can look. So I'm happy to take questions. That was my intro.
Yeah, and I guess one question I'd like to ask is if you can just tell the audience a little bit about Leadership 2030, what it is that you're trying to accomplish and kind of the support that you've received from it.
Yeah. So we started a program, and Kostas, who just asked it, is one of our Leadership 2030 fellows. And we're looking 10 years ahead. When we started, our late founder, Nikos Mouchlidis, I made him a promise when we started HALC, and I was in my 30s, and our core were all in their 30s, that we were not going to grow old in this job. See, I even shaved my head to hide the gray hair so I wouldn't look old. But But one of the problems we've had as institutionally in the Greek American community is that we don't have a regeneration, right? You've seen, and despite how good some of our leaders are, when they pass at 80 or 90 years old, they're still the leader of their organization. And the fact is, we think that your generation, which is the first, now everybody is fully American, they're getting the best educational experiences, they're going to the best universities, they're doing internships and all that, that we should bring people together and prepare them to be leaders in our community and in American society and global society as a whole. So what we do is we bring in about 20 fellows a year, and we go as part of the first New York class. We've had 2 Chicago classes. This January, we're going to announce a class that's more national. It's outside of Chicago and New York area. And we provide them with mentors, training, access, whatever I have access to, I give them access to. They have meetings with government officials from the United States, from Greece, from Cyprus, from Israel. And what we're trying to do is give them a common point of reference, training, and experience that and the reason it's called by 2030, the first of these fellows, so the oldest of them will probably be early 40s, the youngest will be 25. No other institution in our community will have created an entire generation of leaders who have that common point of reference, and they have each other. So we're trying to be like, we see this as a relay race, and we're trying to hand the baton to you guys, and also to provide institutions that are useful in your career, in your civic life, and in your personal life. And in terms of your support, this also is a program that is funded and supported by the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. So it's the Nikos Mouiaris Leadership 2030 Fellows supported by the Stavros Niarchos Foundation.
Great. Another question was, we obviously have a new president-elect that has been pro-Greece and pro-Cyprus in the past. What can Biden do to expand that relationship with Greece and Cyprus and ultimately hold Turkey accountable? So
the good thing is just continue the things that have been starting since that started from the second term of Obama, right? To the Trump administration's credit, on the bilateral relationships, there have been significant improvements. Some of it has to do with, again, congressional requirements. I mean, yes, we had the lifting of the Cyprus arms embargo, but remember, that was part of the East Med Act. Yes, we had the expansion in Suda Bay, but let's remember that was also congressionally mandated. But the bilateral relationships have been on a significant upswing since 2014, and I think they're going to continue. What we didn't see is a holding of Turkey accountable. And at the very least, we know there's not going to be any chumminess between Biden and Erdogan. We saw even during the campaign, Biden speak quite bluntly. We saw Erdogan's spokesperson, Kalim, threaten Biden back. We also saw a week ago today, when Biden was projected winner by CNN, you saw a lot of people scrambling in Turkey. You saw over the next few days the price of the lira drop. You saw Erdogan's son-in-law, who is very close to Kushner, and finance minister resign. He's probably going to be implicated in the Halkbank prosecution in the Southern District of New York. So that would have been a real crimp in bilateral relations if he was still there. You saw Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu of Turkey all of a sudden call Foreign Minister Vendias and ask him what Greece's conditions are for restarting talks. So you saw a lot of movement where Turkey was showing evidence of realizing that their blank check with Trump is over. Now, we also need to see the U.S. really hold Turkey accountable, and that starts with putting the CAATSA sanctions. Remember, there's another piece of U.S. law that says if you buy weapons from Russia, you got to get sanctions. And Turkey obviously bought Russian S-400s. Secretary Pompeo kept moving the goalposts on declaring even a violation of CAATSA, and Turkey kept pushing. Every inch that they were given, they took a mile. And of course, they tested the S-400s. They targeted Greek F-16s with them, and then they went and tested them on the Black Sea. That's something that the Biden administration cannot let Turkey get away with. In fact, there's some legislation moving in Congress right now that may pass that may force Trump, in one of his last acts of office, to impose these sanctions. There's also an ability to name and shame Turkey in terms of religious rights violations. The U.S. does a consistent report, the State Department, where they can call out Turkey as a country of particular concern, which it doesn't sound so ominous, but that is the label that's given to the worst religious freedom violators in the world. And given what Turkey did in Hagia Sophia, to Hagia Sophia and to the Hora Church, on top of their regular denial of full religious freedom for the ecumenical patriarch and Turkey's other Christians, they deserve that label. It's been a long time since they gotten it, and the Biden administration should provide that kind of standard of accountability.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. We definitely look forward to working with HALC in more detail. And also, I mean, a question that we got, I just want to, if you can give like a quick overview of this, was those that aren't studying politics or international affairs, how could they help and advocate for Greece and the Eastern Med? Yeah,
even if you're not studying, I can tell you, you can, even by retweeting things or going on Twitter, especially on Twitter, because we've seen this, journalists and politicians specifically follow that medium. Make yourself known. We have tools. If you sign up, and Kostas can help you with that, and a lot of you have participated in this. If you sign up to HALC's action alert list, we can send you out even draft tweets when we do that. But when we draw attention to our issues, when we put a spotlight on our issues, somebody is going to take notice. And I can show you, one time when we sit down, I can give you guys a real in-depth analysis that every time we've had a tweet go viral, even in our community, a non-Greek journalist picks up on it, calls us, and you can see when we all band together and create a lot of noise, somebody non-Greek is going to take interest, may pick it up, it may end up as an article in the Washington Examiner or in the Hill or in the national interest, but even those little moves, making a phone call, making email to your member of Congress, but showing up. The old maxim of decisions are made by those that show up is absolutely true.
Thank you very much for your time again. And again, we look forward to working with HALC as we continue.
Have a great rest of the conference.
Thank you. And
thank you, Mr. Zemmenides, for really taking to heart that Chinese proverb of living in an interesting nature of our times, and contributing to that with the Leadership 2030 Fellowship. My sister is a Leadership 2030 Fellow, so I see firsthand the impact and passion that you have created. So thank you. There we go. Up next, we are exploring reimagining technological innovation with Dr. Vassleios Nasis and NHSA President Petros Besieris, who is an MBA candidate at University of Michigan Dearborn and cybersecurity consultant at Deloitte, joining live from Detroit, Michigan.
Thank you, Yanni. An academic and entrepreneur who over the last 15 years has made significant scientific contributions to the fields of telecommunications, signal processing, and computer vision, Dr. Vassleios Nasis is the founder and CEO of Mitrakos. Over the past decade, this platform has played a crucial role in creating a more connected world, specifically in the areas of environmental and healthcare monitoring. Gentlemen, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Endy. And once again, Dr. Nasis, thank you so much for being with us here today virtually. Dr. Nasis, as Endy mentioned, you and Netronics Group, came into market fairly recently, specifically in 2010, and you've been creating those intuitive solutions to kind of tackle on those many challenges facing today's society. And more so, you really had the opportunity to revolutionize and innovate a modern approach to connect people, places, and devices. Just to start up though, I'd like to ask a broad question so we're all on the same page. Can you just explain a little bit more about the Internet of Things, or IoT, and why it's important today?
Yeah, thanks, Petro, for the invitation, and good evening to everyone who's attending the conference today. So, Internet of Things is essentially the foundation of what we call today, or what's starting now to be the Industry 4.0. So you can think of it as everything connected to anything. It's almost like we have social network, humans have social networks. IoT is really the social network for objects and tools. You can think of it as from the car that you're driving that might be connected, or all the way to the thermostat at home that you have, or an air purifier, or the lights. So, we have IoT is essentially extension of anything else other than the humans.
Okay, great. And I think you mentioned a little bit about Industry 4.0, and our convention theme again today focuses on emphasizing change and innovation. So I'm a little bit interested more in learning about what exactly is Industry 4.0, and what changes can we expect to be made in our society?
So Industry 4.0, it's all about data. Okay, and what happens is we are generating tremendous amount of information, enormous amount of data every day, that if you take that data and you package it in a way, you create information. Ever since essentially internet was embedded in our lives more and more, from the late 90s and on, we started creating much more footprint of data, whether the things that we're searching, whether the information that we produce every day by wearing devices like smart watches and stuff like that. So all of this is data. Now, the world is changing in a fashion where this data becomes information, and that information, it has value. So now, it's not always necessarily a bad thing. There is a lot of negative publicity about all this information, but think about that this can be used towards improving your life, improving your well-being, improving and making your business more efficient. So everything is related, correlated. So what Industry 4.0 is actually doing is taking these advantages that we have right now and being able to collect this information and analyze this information and essentially create a better integration between human and machine. So this way, humans can focus on humans and machines can do our same work, which is very time consuming for us thus far. So every few years, actually, the World Bank is producing a report and say it's called actually the future of work. And one of the very important things that you will see over there is that everything is going to change as far as how we do things. But really, what the machines cannot do is the emotional intelligence component. So, which means that humans will have to remain humans in order for this interaction to keep happening. So, when you make a sale, that's an emotional intelligence type of a practice. It's not the machine does that, is doing the transaction for you, and so on. Therefore, innovation, and the way we do things, it's really, this is where we are going to focus as humans from here on. And everything else that has to do with analytics and calculations and stuff like that is going to be more of the machine that's going to be providing this information for us.
Right, definitely. And I know that you mentioned briefly about just data analytics and, kind of the amount of data that's just been incorporated with new technologies and whatnot. But I guess that kind of leads into the next question, more so specific to the pandemic and with NHSA's interest in environmental sustainability. Do we see any benefits come from integrating IoT within the healthcare and environmental industries?
Absolutely. And actually, one of the most important things that IoT brought, and I'm actually proud to say that we contributed to that, even our team. It was during the pandemic, one of the things that became very obvious was, first of all, we couldn't interact the way that we were doing before, the same way we run a conference today, for instance. Okay, so everybody had to learn to work remotely. Everybody had to deploy equipment to collect information remotely. But also what happened was it sparked innovation around how life is going to be from here on. So the pandemic, what showed us is that COVID-19, it's actually an airborne virus. So that's why in indoor spaces, it's really bad, right? That's how you have the most propagation of the virus. So companies really took action. They action in a way, that they had to build better purifiers. One of my companies under the Neutronics Group, Airthings, it was doing that, it was developing solutions for air quality monitoring. So now you combine that air quality monitoring with purifiers to create a better indoor space, a safer space, as a matter of fact. So, it completely sparked innovation everywhere when it comes to healthcare or health and wellness. So one of the things that I'm very positive about from here on is that after COVID, we're just going to be a healthier society, a more informed society, and we're going to have essentially more tools and going to feel more comfortable in collecting that information for our better well-being.
Definitely. And that's very important to know. And I know they mentioned about Airthings. Has the company have supported other countries regarding to the pandemic in terms of aiding purifiers in closed spaces, such as hospitals or any other area where there's a lot of crowd?
Yes, absolutely. So think about that, we went in essentially the past year from serving only a few countries to nearly 30 countries. It's really amazing to feel that you're part of the solution rather than the part of the problem, and it's a very rewarding thing, for everyone in the team, but especially gives this, this thing that we always say, do well by doing good, and technology is not always something that is labeled with bad things. Okay, technology can really help you improve life, and it has helped us in improving lives. So what I was saying is that, healthcare and essentially environmental monitoring and monitoring in the healthcare sector, it's really the things that they are going to be heavily driven in this Industry 4.0 era, and especially because of COVID, it accelerated, the whole pace. So, as far as Airthings goes, places now, indoor places, they start being equipped with air quality monitors and air quality and air purifier, as you see, safer places at home, safer places at work, safer places everywhere. So having said that, one of the big trends right now is, monitoring of your health, of your well-being. So companies like Apple, they made tremendous, push towards collecting that information and trying to analyze the information and spark research behind it as to looking what trends, of your everyday life can contribute towards a healthier life or a less healthier life. So Industry 4.0 is going to heavily, really, look into analyzing information, and creating services and creating, valuable input for people on how to live better lives.
Understood. Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Nasis. And I know that we can definitely talk a little bit more about, Industry 4.0, but I just wanted to focus more on your career journey as well. Specifically, what has helped you get to where you are today? And for the audience listening, what advice would you have for others to pursue a similar career path to help out towards society and also within the pandemic specifically?
Look, I mean, what got me here? A lot of studying. Let's start from that. So it was a lot of years in school for sure. But literally, I think was being very open-minded and being not afraid to explore a lot of stuff. Now, looking backwards, things we have been different in many ways, but again, looking backwards, if you change something, you don't know where we have been today, So that's kind of a thing that you really don't want to explore, But the thing is that, after finishing my PhD, I already knew that although I loved academia, I was a professor for a number of years, I knew that I wanted to play a different role. I like that entrepreneurial role. It's, the risk, the higher risk. Safety for me was always too safe. It wasn't compatible with my adrenaline levels, so it didn't have much risk to the academia. Therefore, that's why I became an entrepreneur. But entrepreneur, you can become at any level, right? You can have a PhD and you can have 0 degrees also. I think though, one of the most interesting things, the most important things for me was the fact that with the education that I received, that I got, it allowed me to see 10 years ahead. So when we started Entronics, for instance, back in 2010, IoT was not even a known term. At that time, the world had just started discovering social media and not even cloud services, to be honest. So starting an Internet of Things, a platform of the future, this was 10 years ahead of its time. Now, from one point of view, we'll think that, you are way ahead of your time, so that gives you a lot of time, to become better. So that's true, it worked out for us. But from the other hand, if you're trying to start up a company and raise capital 10 years before anybody else, before the society is ready, well, guess what? You're going to have a lot of doors, you're going to see a lot of closed doors. So, that's why I always suggest if you are going to become an entrepreneur, start young, because it can take a while.
Awesome, thank you again. And I know that we wanted to dedicate some time for the audience to have some questions. So I'm gonna introduce Nia to read some of the questions that are coming from the panel. I'm sorry, from the audience themselves. Nia?
Yes, thank you, Petro and Dr. Nasis. A question from the attendees is, in regards to enterprise Internet of Things, is your company engaging in the smart home space, and how is it trying to penetrate that market, given that we are now in early adoption phase?
Actually, the smart home space were perhaps the first adopters of IoT. So my company, though, we are entering the smart home space, but just to turn this conversation a little bit more into business, consumers are not really interested in paying much of subscriptions for IoT. Although they are comfortable paying subscriptions for things like Netflix and Hulu, they are not very interested in paying subscriptions for IoT when it comes to controlling devices at home, as of yet. That's going to change. But a company like Netronics or Earthings in this particular case, that there were companies that they were bootstrapped more or less, or with very, very little funding, initial external funding. They had to really penetrate markets that they were ready to to pay. That you were providing them a service, not just because it was a good idea. You were providing them a service because it was a necessity for them. So the industrial IoT was really the one that really took off as far as generating revenues faster. For the foreseeable future, in the sense of the next couple of years, that's going to be the biggest contributor in the IoT space, the industrial type of IoT. In other words, the commercial version of it.
Awesome, thank you. Were there any other questions from the audience?
Yes, we do have another one. The next question is, how has your accelerator Netronics Ventures helped aid in the fight against COVID-19?
Well, thanks for the question. So just so everybody understands, Netronics Ventures, it's really a branch of the Netronics Group organization. And essentially we created this, a couple of years ago to allow startups, people with great ideas that they knew a respective, an industry, that they were expert in an industry. And they didn't have really the technological background to come to that, to use Netronics' IoT platform, and essentially to launch their idea, from concept to within 11, 12 months, and actually generating revenues within the first year, essentially. So, right now we have 4 companies there. One, as a matter of fact, is Things, which is one of the biggest contributors towards the fight against COVID-19, in the sense of creating clean, offering cleaner indoor spaces and turning any space into a safer place, essentially. So another one is DryQ. DryQ, it's actually a diaper monitoring company for elderly care. Just in these countries, there is millions of people in home care or elderly care places. So especially because of COVID, as you understand, those were the most sensitive places for people to visit, and the most sensitive places for even nurses or staff to interact with the people in that space. Therefore, DryQ has been the company that also has been offering services, for remote monitoring and, of elderly people, and being able to offer them better quality of life with less interaction that could expose them to a danger such as COVID. So we see a lot of more and more companies right now coming on board when it comes to preventative healthcare. So this way, anything to prevent you from going to the doctor or to the hospital.
Okay. Yeah, and I think thank you again, Dr. Nasis. So I know we have some time for one more question that just came in from the audience. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. The next question is, how were you able to leverage your Hellenic network when starting your company?
Well, that's a pretty interesting question. Got to think about that. Well, first of all, I studied at Drexel University. At that time, when I got my PhD, the president of the university was Greek, Konstantine Ouranatsis, and he was, a powerhouse. Okay, not just in Philadelphia. I think globally, for sure. One of the, I remember going to speak to people here to pitch the idea of the company. And because of my accent, because Konstantin Papadakis also had an accent from, Greek accent, I already had a positive vibe from the audience, because they were like, oh, here's the little Papadakis now. Unfortunately, we don't have such a very strong business network, and hopefully groups like this can help to establish this. But I think what was really more important, it was not really the help from the Greek network, but it was, the fact that we are Hellenes, okay, and probably the best gift. And the resilience behind it. and the fact that, in other words, we don't take no for an answer. That I think was probably the most important thing, because, you know, when you start up a company, you know, you're going to hear 100 no's and maybe one yes. But is that the resilience? Is that internal motivation that is going to take you to the next level? Any big success story, you know, from that in the technology sector and elsewhere, you know, it had a lot of no's behind it, a lot of rejection. You know, a good friend was speaking earlier, Kelly Vlahakis, you know, her father was actually one of the people that was my role model, you know, when I was starting my company. He shared a lot of interesting information about his beginnings with a lot of rejection and, you know, having big corporations fighting against you. You will see that all the time, but keep this in mind. Every big disruption that happened from ancient years to present, it always started from an outsider. And a perfect example for that, although it's a big company today, is Tesla. Tesla changed the whole automaker industry, and it was an outsider just 10 years ago. So, so I think the best thing is that resilience. That's really what was the most important thing.
Thank you again, Dr. Nasis. So I know we're on time, but once again, really appreciate the feedback, you know, explain more about Neutronics and also just its capabilities of addressing the pandemic that we're dealing with today. So thank you again for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Petro and Dr. Nasis, for your very enlightening words. Dr. Nasis, I love that you said it's important for entrepreneurs to start early. And so I commend all of you students and young professionals today for heeding Dr. Nasis's words and taking a few hours out of your Saturdays for yet another Zoom event. So, well, folks, there you have it. Another NHSA convention in the books, however unconventional it may have been.
Thank you, Yanni, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today, students and special guest speakers for joining us from various parts of the globe for NHSA's first virtual convention and Ariston NHSA scholarship presentation. We sincerely hope that you enjoyed the time you spent with us and wish to get to see you all in person at a future event. For now, NHSA President Petros Besieris will give closing remarks. Thanks again.
Thank you, Yanni and Anthi, for the amazing support to MC our virtual events. So really appreciate being able to run this smoothly. But before we close, you know, once again, I want to thank all the speakers, the attendees who joined us here today. You know, that we've hosted national conventions over the past 11 years in person. And once again, we are grateful for the efforts made to virtually connect with each other to continue to provide our insights around innovation, leadership, and of course, adaptability. Before we leave, you know, I aspire you all to apply the knowledge and advice that was provided from our amazing speakers today on what, you know, change and innovation really bring to our society. So continue to ask questions, grow together as a community, and be curious. Try something new in your professional career or within your studies, whether it's learning a new skill, taking on initiatives on projects, or joining organizations like NHSA. But before concluding, there's one more quote I want to leave from C.S. Lewis, and that's, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. So once again, thank you everyone for your support and attendance, and we will see you soon.